موضوع تزول لكو السلام تزرع أنا ما تجنبين أن نزار الناس مزارعين وأنا الناس وابتا بقر عندي بانتداء قبل يمسلان زار بتاع الدولة ما نجنبين هم مزارعين part of them cattle keepers لكن حاجات الزول لون يسلو كله في محله الحكومة المركزية ممكن مفروض يوفر حاجات الزراعة preparation for the new season بتاع الزراعة لكن أول حاجة مفروض هي الحكومة المركزية وحكومة بتاع ولايات جنوب السودان كله هل أمني في أول حاجة development أي دولة أمني كان ما حاجات ده قالوا كانوا بيشيلوا في ولاية كي وبوزعوا مزارعين كي already مزارع ده هو جعان ما عنده أكل ما عنده مهية ما عنده شنو سوق زادوا حاجة لو بأنتي جده ترانسبورت مثلا بيجيبوا في البلد في مال اللي بيجيبوا في ماركت ده زادوا سي كمان في معنى ده أول حاجة يونس للناس المسؤولين تعالى ده على أساس كده وقت أمن في جنوب السودان ده مثل المزارع ده لو قام من بروبو لجوبا يجي في ربع ساعة وكان قام من مريدي لجوبا يجي في نص ساعة لكن كان قالوا أمني ما في حاجات ده لو جابوا بودي وين في ولايات كيف.
Sounds of the Week on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. Live from Juba, on air and online.
This is iRadio News.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock, time for iRadio News live in the heart of the capital, Juba. But first, the top stories making headlines. At least 27 people have been killed during violent clashes between the Luanjang and Jalwa communities in Kongor area of Tony East County, Warab State. Doctors Without Borders, also known as MSF, also want that 20 critically ill patients in Jonglei State are facing an immediate risk of death as humanitarian blockades continue to prevent life-saving medical evacuations. And the head of African Union's high-level Harder Committee for South Sudan, known as C5, has called for ceasefire and enabling environment, saying the transition can only be concluded through fair, free, credible and inclusive elections. Tune in for these stories and more coming to you in the news bulletin with me, Wol Mapal, and now the news in detail. At least 27 people have been killed during violent clashes between the Luanjang and Jalwo communities in Kongor area of Tony East County, Warab State. The conflict erupted in the Heli House of 14th January with hundreds of cattle reportedly raided from the Jalwo community. Information Minister Mamer Badmobo confirmed the outbreak of violence to IRID this morning. He said the government is assessing the full extent of the damage and will provide updates when available.
That violence was confirmed, it actually happened, but it has been contained. As the government contained the situation on the ground. There's a number of cattle raided, but I cannot confirm people now because we are now trying to establish the level of damage. The government, the state government, is assessing now the situation on the ground. The number of casualties, it was confirmed, as I put it yesterday clearly, that there are 27 live claims, and an injury is not confirmed yet, but we are working on it. We'll let you know. So. The cause of violence is it is this revenge, cycle of revenge that has been continuous in Tony. It is something obvious to all of us.
Warab State Civil Society Organizations Network condemned the violence, calling it senseless and warning that repeated clashes threaten the security and well-being of the state. In a statement dated January 15th, it called upon the Luanjang and Jalwo communities to immediately cease fighting and desist from all forms of retaliation. The organization urged the Warab State government and the national government to intervene without delay and deploy security forces to protect civilians. The civil society group further appealed to peace-building partners and community leaders to support inclusive dialogue, stressing that continued insecurity in Warab State affects the entire nation. Doctors Without Borders, also known as MSF, has warned that 20 critically ill patients in Jonglei State are facing an immediate risk of death as humanitarian blockades continue to prevent life-saving medical evacuations. In a statement released this morning, MSF said severe restrictions on movement have delayed the referral of patients requiring urgent specialized care, increasing the likelihood of permanent disability or death. Gul Badshaj, MSF operations manager said in a statement today, and I quote, "Lives are being put at risk every day because critically ill patients cannot be referred for the care they urgently need. Patient referrals are not optional or administrative procedures. They are life-saving interventions." End quote. MSF warned that the situation is deteriorating rapidly as conflict and displacement increase the needs of vulnerable children and pregnant women. Since December 30th, MSF reports that access constraints have blocked essential medical supplies from reaching hospitals in Lankian and primary health care centers in Pieri. Health facilities that previously treated 1,700 patients weekly are now able to offer only emergency care, leaving around 250,000 people without a reliable healthcare lifeline. MSF is calling for immediate and unhindered access to the region, including predictable flight schedules to deliver medicines, rotate staff, and evacuate critically ill patients. South Sudan and Sudan have discussed strengthening cooperation in electricity production, staff training, and the exchange of technical expertise following a meeting between the Minister of Energy and Dams and the Sudanese ambassador in Juba. According to a state-run broadcaster SSBC, the Minister of Energy and Dams, Honorable Agogma Kurkur, met with Sudanese ambassador to South Sudan, Essam Mohammed Hassan Karar, on Thursday to explore ways of developing South Sudan's energy sector by drawing on Sudan's experience in energy and dam development. The SSBC reports that the meeting focused on mechanisms to increase electricity production, train South Sudanese technicians, organize exchange visits between the two countries' energy ministries, and explore cooperation in renewable energy and dammed projects. Speaking after the meeting, the minister said the discussions aimed at enabling South Sudan to benefit from Sudan's long-standing experience in the energy sector. He added that exchange visits would take place at both ministerial and technical levels. The minister also described the visit as a major motivation for the Ministry of Energy and Dams and highlighted the strong and positive relations between the two countries. He further acknowledged Sudan's role in supporting the peace process and reaffirmed the government's commitment to fully implementing the peace agreement.
تناقشنا فيها قضايا مهمة متعلقة بالطاقة والسدود، ولقد تطرقنا لكيفية تطوير الطاقة في جنوب السودان والاستفادة أيضا من الخبرات الكبيرة لدولة السودان في مجال الطاقة والسدود، وأيضا تطرقنا لتبادل الخبرات بين البلدين، وكذلك تطرقنا أيضا تدريب الكادر الجنوبي من قبل دولة السودان، وأيضا تطرقنا لأنه يكون هناك زيارات متبادلة بين وزارة الطاقة في السودان ووزارة الطاقة والسدود في جنوب السودان من مستوى رفيع الوزراء وكذلك الجانب الفني الأقل من الوزارات. عموما هذه الزيارة تعتبر دافع أساسي بالنسبة لنا في وزارة الطاقة والسدود، ومع العلم التمام أن البلدين يربطهم علاقات إيجابية وعلاقات كبيرة، وأيضا أنا تحدثت له باعتبار السودان هو الضامن لاتفاقية السلام المنشط. أكدنا له أنه نحن أيضا في الحكومة الوحدة الوطنية تعهدنا أن نستمر في هذا السلام ويتم تنفيذه حتى النهاية.
For his part, Ambassador Essam Mohammed Hassan Karar told SSBC that the visit was a practical step toward strengthening bilateral relations between Sudan and South Sudan. He said the two sides discussed developing the electricity production in South Sudan and expressed hope that joint energy and dam projects would be implemented in the future to benefit the people of both countries.
تناقشنا في هذه الزيارة كيفية تطوير العلاقات الثنائية بين وزارتي الطاقة في السودان وفي جمهورية جنوب السودان من خلال تبادل الخبرات، وتناقشنا أيضا في كيفية تطوير وسائل إنتاج الكهرباء في جمهورية جنوب السودان بالاستفادة من الخبرات السودانية، وإن شاء الله ستكون في مستقبل الأيام هنالك مشاريع مشتركة بين البلدين لتوفير الطاقة والسدود للبلدين لما فيه مصلحة الشعبين في السودان وجمهورية جنوب السودان.
The meeting comes as South Sudan continues to face challenges in electricity supply, with the government seeking regional partnerships to improve access to energy and support development. This is iRadio News. The Vatican envoy to South Sudan has called for renewed efforts to de-escalate violence and promote peace across the country. Archbishop Simmons Patrick Hogan warns that sustainable development cannot be achieved without stability. Hogan made the remarks after meeting Vice President Dr. James Waniiga in Juba yesterday. The two discussed the country's security situation and preparations for the December 2026 general elections. Speaking to the state-owned TV SSBC, Archbishop Hogan says the Holy See remains concerned about ongoing violence in parts of the country and urged leaders at all levels to actively promote peace and national unity.
And particularly we spoke about the Holy See's concern for peace in South Sudan. That peace, of course, needs to be prepared for by a de-escalation, particularly of the unfortunate violent conflicts that are still happening around the country. So we spoke the Holy See's hope that the Catholics of this country would give voice to that wish for peace, and that those in positions of authority in the country would promote peace and would promote a de-escalation of the current situation so that peace can flourish, and on top of peace, development, of course. So the Vice President assured me of his ardent wish also to see that movement towards peace, towards de-escalation, and he assured me that as a voice he would speak in that way.
In his remarks, Vice President Dr. James Wanihiga said the government remains committed to maintaining peace nationwide, despite what he described as isolated insecurity-related incidents. According to him, these have been contained. And finally, before regional and international stories, the head of African Union's high-level Haddo Committee for South Sudan, known as C5, has called for ceasefire and enabling environment, saying this transition can only be concluded through free, fair, credible and inclusive elections. The delegation led by South African Ministers agreement ahead of December 2026 general elections. The delegation, which also includes representatives from Algeria, Rwanda and Nigeria, is in Juba to assess the country's preparations for the elections and the implementation of key provisions of the peace agreement. Chad conveyed apologies for its absence. Speaking to SSBC after the meeting, Minister Lumaola said the committee continues to call for calm, a ceasefire and cooperation from all parties to enable the transition period to conclude successfully with elections.
We continued to call for peace, for ceasefire across the country, and to create an enabling environment for the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement, anchored by all the relevant stakeholders who are signatories to the peace agreement. And we have continued to call for peace, to enable all the processes that are supposed to unfold to exit from the transitional period, which is a period of the revitalized agreement, and the transition can only be concluded when there are free, fair, credible and inclusive elections.
For his part, South Sudanese Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Ambassador Mande Semeya Kumba, said the President also reassured the delegation of ongoing cooperation with the international and regional partners.
And His Excellency the President also reassured them of our commitment to peace, elections and our cordial cooperation with our international and regional partners, including our commitment for a better life to the people of the Republic of South Sudan.
This is iRadio Afternoon News, and to the stories making headlines from the region and beyond, here is Ellen Samuel.
Thank you. And now here are some of the stories making headlines in the international arena. The Uganda's electoral agency says President Yoweri Museveni has taken a strong lead in partial results from Thursday's presidential election. Figures announced on Friday morning put Museveni in the lead with 76% of the votes based on returns from 45% of the country's polling stations. He is followed by opposition leader Bobi Wine with about 20%. Ugandans voted in 10th national election on Thursday after an often violent campaign with President Museveni, 81, seeking a 7th term in office. Wine, a 43-year-old pop star turned politician, has alleged massive fraud during the election, which was held under an internet blackout. Elsewhere, families of people killed in the protests in Iran have told the BBC that the authorities are demanding large sums of money to return their bodies for burial. Multiple sources have told BBC Persian that bodies are being held in mortuaries and hospitals, and that security forces will not release them unless their relatives hand over money. At least 2,435 people have been killed during more than 2 weeks of protests across the country. One family in the northern city of Rasht told the BBC that security forces demanded $5,000 to release the body of their loved ones. And finally, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has met Chinese leader Xi Jinping in Beijing, and they have announced a new strategic partnership. Among key concessions, the two leaders have agreed that China will lower tariffs in Canadian canola seed, while Canada will allow 49,000 Chinese EVs into its market. Carney's visit comes after almost a decade of strained ties between Ottawa and Beijing. President Xi said there has been a turnaround of ties between China and Canada since both leaders met at a summit in November last year. Those are some of the stories trending in the international arena. Back to you at the news desk.
Thank you, Helen Samuel, for the regional international stories. And to the world of sport, of course, we are joined live by Darlington Moses.
Thank you so much, Wol Mapal. And now on the sport desk, British heavyweight Anthony Joshua has returned to the gym following the recent car crash which killed two of his friends and team members. The former world heavyweight champions 36 sustained minor injuries in the incident in Nigeria on 29th December. Sina Gama and Latif Lats Ayodele died when their vehicle, in which Joshua was also a passenger, collided with a stationary truck on a major road near Lagos. Paris Saint-Germain head coach Luis Enrique has expressed his happiness over the presence of PSG players Moroccan Ashraf Hakimi and Senegalese Ibrahima Baye in the final of 2025 Africa Cup of Nations. Enrique wished both Hakimi and Baye success in the Continental Tournament's final. The AFCON 2025 final will see Senegal face Morocco next Sunday at the Prince Mauli Abdallah Stadium in Rabat. In Spanish football, Barcelona overcame horse racing Santander with a 2-0 win over Thursday in the Copa del Rey round of 16. The Catalan club defending champions advanced to the quarterfinals thanks to goals from Ferran Torres in the 66th minute and Lamine Jamal in stoppage time. Meanwhile, Valencia beat Horse Bogas 2-0 to reach the next round. New Real Madrid coach Alvaro Arbeloa said he will learn from the team's loss against Albacete in the Copa del Rey. He added that the squad's focus is now on Saturday's La Liga match against Levante. Arbeloa said he is not afraid of failure because it is part of the path to success. And finally, in Italy, Roma announced on Friday the signing of Dutch international forward Doniel Malen on loan from Aston Villa. The deal includes an option for the Italian capital club to make the move permanent. Malen, 26, will wear the jersey number 14. He previously played for PSV Eindhoven and Borussia Dortmund in Germany before joining Aston Villa in January 2025. Thanks. This is all in the world of sport, and back to you, Wol Mapal.
Thanks, Darlington Moses, for the sport updates. And here brings us to the end of the news this afternoon. But first, let's have a quick recap once again. At least 27 people have been killed during violent clashes between the Luanjang and Jalo communities in Kongar area of Tony East County, Warabi State. Doctors Without Borders, also known as MSF, has warned that 20 critically ill patients in Jonglei State are facing an immediate risk of death as humanitarian blockades continue to prevent life-saving medical evacuations. And finally, the head of African Union's high-level Hardor Committee for South Sudan, known as C5, has called for ceasefire and enabling environment, saying the transition can only be concluded through free, fair, credible, and inclusive elections. That is the end of High Radio News. If there is a story or an event you would like High Radio to cover or report about, please send us a text message on +211 925 287 870. It's also our WhatsApp number. Follow us on X at iRadio Juba, like our Facebook page, iRadio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, iRadio South Sudan. You can also visit our website and listen to us online, www.iRadio.org. Stay tuned for news at Arabic at 1/2 past the hour. I am Wol Mapal. Thanks for